quickly. Oh, and it looks like we are now live on YouTube. Sometimes takes a moment. So welcome everyone. Welcome, welcome. I'm just waiting for it to kick in and talk over top of me, which it does. There we go. I'll grab that. I love live. So welcome to the Aligned Ambition Show, where we share women's entrepreneurial wisdom. Are you a woman? Are you a woman starting or growing your online heart-centered business? Are you wanting to do things differently? Do you feel icky? Oh, my tongue's not going to work today. Do you feel icky about using manipulative marketing tactics and are ready to align your business with your ethics, values, and life goals? Then stick around for this conversation. Today, I have with me Ysanne Lewis. Ysanne has been a professional astrologer, timing advisor, public speaker, author, and color therapist for 45 years. She lives near London and has an international clientele. She helps people choose the right timing for direction and to creatively overcome challenges in their life's work while acting as a bridge between the movements of the planetary cycles and our own inner timekeepers. So welcome, Ysanne.
Thank you so much, Larissa. Lovely to be here.
Well, I'm so grateful to have you, and hopefully your tongue is working more than mine. I typically, we get to this time on a Friday afternoon, and that's my brain goes, nope, no more. But I'm so excited to have you. You have so much knowledge that I'm hoping that you'll just share even a little bit. And before we jump into that, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and really how you've maybe evolved in your business to be where you are now?
Ooh, two big questions. Okay, deep breath. Well, I've always said I'm an ordinary person who's had an extraordinary life. I'm 72 years of age now. And I think as we get older, we look back more, hopefully not in a kind of negative way, but a way of getting perspective. And as from a child, I think my love of the heavens, of nature, as above, so below, was kind of fired and forged in the experiences I had. And curiosity ran me. I had a family, have a family who were also very curious. I like that word, don't you?
Curiosity, yes.
Keeps you young, well, we hope. And wanting to see what's around the corner. And there's a very interesting transit. Don't get too excited about that word. It's just like an invitation when a planet or more than one planet come together in the heavens to create what's called a conjunction. It's like an ending and beginning. And we've got a very important one coming up this Sunday, maybe Saturday in the West Coast over there, in America and Canada, but late Saturday night, Sunday morning. And it's all about the adventurer, the explorer. And I always, as a child, wanted to be an explorer. I don't think I was physically that strong enough, but I loved seeing what was around the corner, as I said, and always fascinated by the movements of the planets, the cycles of the moon. And I know you're interested in that, Larissa, the cycles of the moon, which linked with the feminine, the female. And I work with that a lot with my clients. So the moon cycles are something we can all follow through a diary, a calendar. That's not too difficult once we understand what the new and full moon and dark moon mean. But the rest of it is quite complex. And when I took astrology up for a living, I just wanted to be self-employed. I was tired of being employed. I'd worked for what, 8, 9, 10 years. And I just wanted to have my own freedom. Freedom's been very important to me. And before that, I trained as an actress. I did a lot of voluntary work, a lot of office work, and I wanted a purpose. I know that sounds a bit precious, but I always wanted a purpose. And I wasn't going to take the world by storm. I wasn't a genius. I wasn't sure how much of an influence I could have to help people, but I always wanted to help people. And also to have my own independence and freedom. That was very important too. May not seem to correlate together, but they do. So I learned astrology when there were no programs for this on computers. Computers were really in their infancy. And I did all the logarithms and maths. Whoops. And I was hopeless at maths. But where there's a will, there's a way. And I really knuckled down. Later on, computer programs, and I can do calculations online like this. And the interpretations, 2,500 variables in a moment in time. the interpretation of the synthesis of cycles of the planets, the angles to one another on the day and indeed time of a person's birth. This is the art of an astrologer, and I'm still learning after 45 years. Can't believe how time has just flown. And I've been very blessed. It's been like my best friend. Quite early on, I was giving talks. I traveled to America and gave talks, and my charts were then handwritten. They're on cassettes, CDs, and now on files. So I've had to move with the times. That's how it's evolved from a left hemisphere point of view, left hemisphere point of view. But it's given me an amazing opportunity to understand people, to work with them from all walks of life. And I have huge respect for the subject of astrology, which means language of the stars. And it is a language, and it's a map of the psyche as well. And from the moment we're born, patterns and cycles are there, and cycles are set into motion. And with our ancestry as well, which is fascinating.
It really is. And as you were talking about, by hand doing the math and charting, and I was like, oh my goodness, right? You put in your date and it spits out a graph. This is what we get on the computer now. But I remember a time, and this is aging myself as well. It was probably late 70s. Yeah, probably late 70s, getting a kit, and it had all this information, and it had these circles on it so you could draw out your birth chart. And oh my goodness, I remember that. I totally had forgotten that memory. And I remember doing it because I'm always fascinated by things like that, but I never took it further because something else grabbed my attention. But to do that and be so immersed in it, at that time, yeah, and as you said, not being, math inclined, but then to know that you had to do all of that. What a fascinating thing to, like, what was it that maybe grabbed you in that? Like the real, I have to keep doing this.
Well, that's really interesting because I remember Linda Goodman's books, Sun Signs, actually are very good, but I've never wanted to do star sign, sun sign columns, write books. I have written a book, but not on that. And the sun is very much like the center of our solar system. It's our core essence we can draw on. It belongs to a certain season of the year, like Scorpio is the middle of autumn. Okay, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius. And very briefly, spring is Aries, Taurus, Gemini. Summer is Cancer, Leo, Virgo. Autumn, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius. And winter, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces. So actually there's 12 zodiac signs, which people knock a lot and say, well, there's a lot more. They are linked with the nature cycle, and our bodies are from nature. I believe in a song that our bodies are from nature. The word nature means natal, to be that which is born. So I thought, I'm a Scorpio right now. And I said to the person I was talking to about it, who was an astrologer, he said, you know your moon sign? And I thought, oh, I said, what's the moon sign? What's the moon about in astrology? Well, it rules the first years of life, particularly your matriarchal line, your inner home, your outer home, your habits, your responses, your mothering side. Oh, I said, I can look that up. He said, you're going to have to do the maths because the moon changes sign every 2.5 days of the month. And with your time of birth, it could obviously change on a particular day. So I really wanted to know more. I'd always been interested in psychology, mythology. Mythology was the old form of psychology. So all the gods and goddesses are like, these parts of us, fascinating. And I have a friend, she's the same age as me, and she was over from Chicago, and she had done a course in astrology. And I remember plonking her down on my bedroom floor in Bath where I was living and said, right, we're going to learn this. You're going to teach me. And we went on to sun was 2 a.m, and she said, please let me go to bed. Please let me go to bed. And I was on a mission, immersed. I've always really thanked her for that, because I learned, and then I did a course in it, and I took it up as a profession, because I just didn't want to be employed anymore. And I thought, well, you know what? I'll just do this for a year. In 1979, there was a lot of jobs around. I just tried for a year, and I think, and you may understand this, it chose me. Some things choose us. It could be a house, it could be a country, um, a situation that comes along, a tree, even. It chooses us. And I felt it really chose me. I had no idea I'd do this for 45 years and still doing it. So
Yeah.
that's how I got immersed. And in a way, I wanted to help people. And I think through this, I want to empower people to find out their own passage, their own journey, that being to be an explorer,
Hmm.
the
I
curiosity.
find it very fascinating. And over time, it's grabbed my attention, right? And over the years, here and there. And just maybe a week or so ago, I realized I'd been using my wrong birth time.
Oops.
And I was off by 12 hours. I had been using AM instead of PM.
Oh, so
And
easy.
I found an old baby book and realized I was off by 12 hours. And what a difference it made. And I believe it may have been you that had when we were having a conversation about the time difference, right? And what a difference it makes. And I'm just like, yes, what a difference it makes. It's the same day. It's this, everything was the same. It was just exactly 12 hours later. But yeah, everything shifts, right? Everything shifts.
Very,
And
very interesting. And I think even a planet or the moon can change sign on that day. Angles between planets, there's a certain amount of degrees before they start separating, so their influence together isn't so strong. But we do have something called the ascendant or rising sign, which is based on your time of birth, linked with the date and place. It's like putting a sat nav or GPS in, isn't it? That information. And every 2 hours, a different sign, one of the 12, coming up over the horizon. So if you've been born at dawn, like I'm a Scorpio, if I've been born at dawn, which I wasn't, the sun would be rising in Scorpio, and my ascendant, how I appear to the world, my face to the world, would be Scorpio and my core essence. But I was born with Aquarius rising at lunchtime, and that made me very different in some respects on the outside to what I feel underneath. And I do try to work to bring them together. But the persona, the ascending sign, is very much how people see you and how it filters your whole chart. So you would have found 12 hours apart that maybe even the opposite sign rising to what you thought it was
mhm.
would be
Now
present.
I'm trying to remember if it went from Virgo to Pisces or Pisces to Virgo. Um,
Well,
but it
okay,
was
yeah, I can probably tell you. So what date? So what? So you
January 6th and it was 68 and it was 10:53 p.m.
late at night.
Yeah,
Okay, so later tonight the sun will be at the base of the chart, and you're a sorry, January the
6th.
so okay, so
Capricorn.
at the base. So basically, let me see a moment. It would be I'm trying to go into left hemisphere brain. So you're Capricorn, so probably Virgo rising.
Yeah, that might have been yes, and
Yes, it
I
would be. Yeah,
believe
not
yeah.
Pisces anyway. Okay.
Yes, and I think that was the confusion with the 12-hour difference and then it was like yeah, and so I feel like I'm starting all over again. Like I've never known anything because
Oh.
maybe and that's maybe why it didn't grab me because it wasn't correct, right? It wasn't correct. And so
And to be
yeah.
tender also, because quite often you've found people in your life, parents, children, partners, friends, who have the same sign, sun sign as your rising sign, or the same sun sign as your moon. It's fascinating how all those links come together. So there is a link with genetics and ancestry.
Oh yes, yes, I have heard that.
Mm.
And maybe you can answer this. This is totally off, well, not off the topic we're talking about, what we're here for. I had a hard time getting my birth time, right?
Mm,
Because I was born, almost 60 years ago. And so to get my charts, my mother is no longer alive.
right.
And even my daughter, I thought I had the records, but I had given them to her previously. So I no longer had them. We ordered the long form birth certificate. There was nothing on there. How do people find that out? Like, if you don't have someone who's written it down and kept it, how do you find that out?
Well, even if people come up with a time, it may not be accurate. And a lot of people say they're born on the hour. Some people are, but it's not that likely. Uh, you really need to have a stopwatch there for that first breath, which is, that's when you partake of the earth's energy away from the water, if you like.
Mm.
Independent life from the mother. So the first breath is the time of birth we use astrologically. And the word horoscope means view of the hour, which is quite interesting. That's where the word horo and scope come from. So yes, it can be in a baby book, it can be on a birth certificate. When people aren't quite sure, I ask them to really grill whoever's in question, the father, mother, aunt, sibling, to say, okay, tea time, what does that mean back then? It may be different now if we have tea time at all.
Hmm.
Um, People have their charts rectified. There's ways of looking at significant events in one's life with certain angles are formed from planets where you can see perhaps what time a person was born. The other way, I'm asking, like I mentioned just now, that your parents and siblings and children and friends can have sun signs which are very linked with your own rising sign, which is
Mm.
based on the time of birth. So sometimes if the time of birth they don't know within a couple of hours or maybe 5 hours, I might work with that. But there is there's a lot of information on that day of birth.
Hmm.
And astrology is just one way of looking at someone. As I talk with somebody, information comes, they open up. It's a kind of a map where the planetary cycles are. That's why sun sign astrology works up to a point. The time of the year, for example, the sign before you're born. Like if you are Capricorn, the month before you might feel your energy is a little lower. It's like the hour before dawn. So just to take more care. Okay. The opposite time of year, there can be a pull on your tides, on your energies. And during the month, when the moon is in opposition to your own moon and stuff like that, many, many things. So I do a lot of work for people who don't know the time of birth. I'm an intuitive as well, but I do like the left hemisphere brain of astrology, of, the mathematics of timing.
Hmm. Hmm.
But it's amazing how many people do know their time of birth as well, or roughly.
Yes, and my daughter, it's one of two, right? Because I remember the two, because I have two daughters, and I know it's one of two. I said, so ask your sister, and whatever is in her book, yours is the other one.
Oh,
Because I passed it on to them. They're adults, and I gave their baby books to them, and I said, so just check with your sister because you no longer have yours, and they'll figure it out. But yes, it was. I hadn't even thought of the baby book until I found mine, right? And then it was like, oh, right. This is a thing we do. We write these things down.
and to
So
really grill
yes.
the parents, if they're alive, or somebody you can ask to say, well, yes, what do you mean? Was it night or day? Are you a morning person? Are you not? That often does figure. If you're a morning person, you're born nearer to dawn. I mean, I was born at lunchtime. I'm not a morning person unless I have to be. I'd say 8 times out of 10 that applies, but not always.
Yes, I'm a morning person, and I was, yeah. So yeah.
Nice.
Although I tend to do the opposite of whatever the norm is for me. So that's for people of my sign, I'm a contrarian, I think. But
Mm. Yeah, with Capricorn actually, is it called? They call it the grown up of the zodiac because they're little old people when they're young, and they tend to get lighter and younger as they get older. Uh,
mhm.
and there's the wise person there too, if one can harness that wisdom bank and taking it slowly, cautiously, and then that's why they can achieve a lot as well because they have that pragmatic planning as well. And having
Mm.
said all that, somebody could be a Capricorn with stacks of planets in water signs like Pisces, Cancer, lots of fire, and that doesn't totally figure, but generally speaking, it does. Okay, and it's
Yeah.
an earth sign, so it does like things to be practical, or at least to see the usage, the value of an idea. Like I could never understand algebra. I thought, what the heck is the point in algebra? I wish somebody could tell me.
Yes. For
Yeah.
me, calculus is the one I don't understand calculus. Same idea, right? It's just like, no, talking about that and the energies of the seasons and things like that, our business mastermind has just switched to seasonal planning. So
Love.
we had done this big event at the new year and done all our year planning, and then none of us moved forward with any of it, right? Realizing about a week later, oh, this is the totally wrong time for this. And so we just did it again in the spring. We just did our year planning, and we're moving to that. And we've now do our month planning on the new moon. So not on the first of the month or, the end of the month before. We do it on the new moon, set our intentions, and then we do our check-in at the full moon. And, so we've switched that. And even, not even, yeah, even the ladies who really had no knowledge of any of this can't believe the difference it makes, right? The difference it makes. It's just like this huge relief to be like not fighting everything. And, I mean, we still have issues with other people's calendars and blah, blah, blah. But just to know that I can move with the energy. So some of them are exploring a little further and things like that. Can you maybe, talk to that, the energy of the seasons and the moons and
Love to. My favorite subject. As I mentioned earlier, I believe in a soul and I have to believe in reincarnation, but one doesn't have to. There's definitely a journey through our ancestry and there's a collective energy which we can tap into. But our bodies are from nature. And I think quite often we forget our inner diaries, we're natural diarists. We have these calendars and we forget that and we fill in our own outer diaries or a phone diary, whatever. And we often do it. In fact, I was talking about this on a business group the other day, and we're saying how often we fill in because it looks good, not so much to other people, but to ourselves to know we're busy. So we put things in, and yes, sometimes they're important, sometimes they really aren't. And then when the time comes, something perhaps really lovely comes along, important, and because we're committed people, we feel no, we can't say no or make a white lie up about doing the other thing. And as you know, quite often when we don't fill those spaces in too much for the year ahead, it fills in anyway. It's like water, it just seeps in and fills up the container. So, but I think the new and full moons particularly are very important. I mean, did you know that 300 years ago, probably in America, certainly in the UK, New Year's Day was the vernal equinox, the beginning of spring, the beginning of Aries. Yeah.
Mhm.
Mm. And Easter, I think from about the second century AD, Easter was always the first Sunday after the full moon in Aries, and it still is. That's pretty pagan if you think about it.
Mhm.
But I think Christianity tried to compromise to a certain extent with pagan habits, to get on with them. So there we are. But no, the seasons are quite important, and there is a lot of information, statistics about certain health problems, illnesses which occur with people born in, say, February, early spring, winter, summer, which is quite interesting to look up. I won't go into that now. But the new moon occurs once a month. Sometimes we get two new moons.
Mhm.
Okay, sometimes we get two full moons. You call it once in a blue moon, and it's not very often. So the new moon is a seeding time. We actually seed ideas and intents. I often say at a new moon, you have the idea, don't rush it, explore it, let that little seed get sort of entrenched, like it would do in the ground, and make sure it's in the ground properly. And then during the month, in terms of our cycles, a week later, the half moon, some manifestation can occur. And I love the idea about not rushing and that any kind of intent, commitment, project, there has to be the seeding of it and then the pause before the manifestation. You see that in nature. You don't go out to a field, a farmer doesn't go up and pull on his crops to make them grow. But again, this is our brains that do this. And I always say that if we don't pause, nature somehow finds a way of giving us a lesson. Because if we don't find time for recreation, rest as well, sooner or later we're obliged to find time for illness. And
Mhm.
it's only our brains that don't pause. Our bodies will suffer from that. But nature, music, dance, and conversation usually has pauses. Yes, and even in a book, you get chapters and paragraphs usually. Very hard to read a book which doesn't have that. So at the new moon, it's a lovely time. It's a very feminine energy as well. The new moon, you can't actually see, it's dark. And the 3 days before the new moon, you might want to bear this in mind, it's a dark moon, 72 hours before. And that's a time known to our wonderful ancestors and tribal people and wise women and communities where it was a time for a retreat more. It was the time of meditation, perhaps, and allowing a little bit of chaos in. So I always say 3 days before the new moon, allow things to fall apart a bit. Just let them gestate and rest more. And we can't always, but if we can plan it, brilliant. And then the new moon, the seeding takes place. 2 weeks later, with the waxing moon, at the full moon, things can come into the light of day. So again, in times gone by without electricity, public events would occur at a full moon. Or if you wanted to be under the radar, you're a spy or something, you would not. You didn't want to parachute into Europe in the Second World War as a spy if there was a full moon. Very simple, but, you know, very effective. And in the waxing moon, you get things building up. Fluid starts to gather in the body. We weigh more to full moon. Just a tiny bit, but we do. And then we have the waning moon, which is really a best time for letting go of things, even for operations. Hemorrhaging is less, fluid level is less. I'm not saying one shouldn't have an operation at a full moon or before, but ideally in the waning moon, again, building up, or not building up, but letting go into the dark moon to the new moon. Those are the best times, along with dental surgery and all the rest of it. So for projects, I often say, yes, get things going on a new moon. People born at a new moon, and many of us are, that's when the sun and moon are in the same sign and the same degree. Again, it's a conjunction when there's an ending and beginning and a meeting of two energies. And the two eyes of heaven, sun and moon, which are always chasing one another, going apart and coming back. You know, they come together, they're in union. And at that point, we can actually start things going. And people are born at a new moon, and they're usually the people who are great to have in a team. They can take things a little personally, but it's quite a subjective energy. But then, as somebody once said to me, what other way is there of taking something but personally? But also, they think outside the box. They come up with bright ideas that other people haven't thought of. And full moon birth people, when the sun and moon are in opposite signs, can be quite, well, I'm not saying they can't or can be old souls, but they've had collectively and through the family line, or some people might say other lifetimes, a lot of experiences, and they can bring them all together now. They've just got to get that center point, and they can be great counselors. And in later life, there's quite a lot of wisdom. So, and of course, there's the phases of the moon in between, which are important. So I do think it's important to start a project, to have a meeting at a new moon. If it's at the dark moon, it's okay. But sometimes the energy can be a bit tired. You know, the dark moon is 3 days before the new moon. And when the moon is just changing sign and not forming strong angles to other planets, we call that void, of course, void being empty. And sometimes things just get cancelled. It's an empty energy. So when people ask me to pick a time for a meeting, a workshop, webinar, whatever, I look at those kind of things. Is that too much
Yeah.
information, or is that?
No, I loved it. I loved it. I don't know what everybody else is thinking, but I loved it. So I was like, it really feeds into what we're exploring.
Well, that's what I'm trying to do, to make it simple. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And really, as we're moving into like the mastermind Creative You Business, currently called Creative You Business, soon to be Heart Centered Academy, is about that feminine energy, right? Bringing more of that feminine energy into our businesses. As women, it can be difficult to move in that very masculine energy without burning ourselves out and really struggling with our self-care and all of those things and bringing more of that feminine energy in. So seasonal planning just made perfect sense to us. And then setting, our goals for the month or our monthly intentions with the new moon.
Yes.
And we'll probably build on that over time, but it's a good starting place.
Mm.
Now, what are some of the things that we maybe want to look for in the next, I don't know, 3 months, ideally?
What's going on astrologically? Yeah.
Yes.
It's always good to go back a little bit first and then move forward. We've just had, and no doubt you've all heard of this, the eclipses. They occur in tandem twice a year. In tandem meaning there's a solar and a lunar one, usually in the spring, usually, and then there's a solar lunar, usually in the autumn. Now we have a new moon and a full moon every month. That's a fact. But a solar eclipse can only occur at a new moon, but not every new moon. Occur at a new moon. And that's when the moon comes between the sun and the earth. It darkens the sun, the light.
Mhm.
I don't know, did you see it where you were?
Partially. I watched most of it online because we only had like a third of it.
Ah,
But you had quite a bit, didn't
no,
you?
not in UK, hardly any. No, it's more like
Right.
Mexico and East Coast America, Montreal. And,
Yes.
mm,
Yes.
yes, but so and then the lunar eclipse can only occur at a full moon. Okay. And the word eclipse means to leave. Okay. And I often remember what somebody once said to me when I was taking care of someone in America who's quadriplegic, and a friend said to me, um, who takes care of the carer, but more to the point, his needs are eclipsing your own. And I thought, what a wonderful expression. And that's when the sun, your own capacity to shine your own light, which we know we can overdo it, but to shine our light can be eclipsed. So we need to look at that balance. And women in particular really need to know that. And my little pet saying is that people aren't less important than us, but they're not more. We've got to get that balance. And if we don't respect ourselves, others don't. So we have big learning curves that way. But we just had these eclipses on the 25th of March was the lunar one, and the 8th of April was the solar one.
Mhm.
At that time also, and it's still going on, the planet Mercury, messenger of the gods, um, went into what we call retrograde motion. Okay, again, some of you will have heard of this. It happens 3 times a year. But just before I mention that, just to say that with the eclipses, what has left your life, what is being cleared out, what is ready to be released, and what comes up to be looked at. And it's quite exhausting. Eclipses tend to zap our energy fields, the Earth's and our own. And you see events going on in the world, Earth changes as well. Some of the earthquakes recently have been very linked with them, and that's not unusual. But Mercury going retrograde for 3 weeks, it doesn't go backward, but it's to do with its speed related to the Earth, so it appears to be going backward. And the prefix re, applies. That started on the 1st of April and will complete this coming Thursday, 25th. It's been quite a long one, this one. Usually it's 3 weeks. This is just a bit more. And it's a time of reassessing, re-editing, retracting, revisiting, redoing, and using the right hemisphere brain more. So may I suggest that even up until Thursday and maybe even the week after that, to use that right hemisphere brain more. Intuition, go back over things, retrace steps. You may have found that people have come back into your life, or maybe lost opportunities, or things have been cancelled more. Yeah, nodding away.
Mhm.
And then as it moves, but do you know what, again, is going back to pause. If we don't pause and reflect, nature has a wonderful way in the cosmos of suggesting and encouraging us, sometimes tripping us up, to do just that. There's a full moon coming up on Wednesday in Scorpio, which is a very powerful feminine sign for transformation. Has a bit of a bad press for the witchy and the magical side, but that's just ignorance.
Mhm.
I think when we misuse our power, obviously it's not good, or we disempower ourselves. And this full moon on Wednesday gives us an opportunity to really look at our power base, to see how we're empowering ourselves and others, and not to come from fear. That's important. And the new moon next month is on May the 8th. Well, you probably know that. This one
Mhm.
was in Aries, this one's in Taurus. Now, on Sunday, 2 days off, Sunday, 21st of April, we have a conjunction, again, this meeting of two energies, Jupiter and Uranus, the sky gods, coming together. They do this once every 14 years. So I'd like you to look back at 2010-11. It's only approximate. 2000, get this right. Let's see, go back 14 years before that, 19. I beg your pardon, I've got that wrong. 2010-11, then going back to 97, beg your pardon. And then before that, and we go back 14 years. In fact, one of them was when the moon landing occurred, you know. So, and why do I mention that? Because Jupiter's the explorer, our inner explorer. It's our biggest planet.
Mm.
We're all Sagittarius, a sign of the explorer, mentally or physically. And Uranus is the liberator. It's the magician. It's the maverick. It's the freedom seeker. So when they come together, you know, and we're going to feel this if we haven't been feeling it quite strongly, we're going to feel that need to break free of something. And I know a lot of people have felt that promise in the air, wanting that change, but feeling frustrated. How are they going to do it? How is it going to happen? So it's like something really building up. And I think it's a time now, this coming week, looking at where we can say enough. Let's be more daring. Let's take some risks. Let's take some risks. Let's explore. Let's remember what it was like to be a child and wanting to see what's around that rock face or that corner, and you're being told, oh, there's nothing of interest there, but you have to go and see, don't you? Because you're a child. So there's something about now, about looking at your businesses, about where you want to put fresh air into it, and what is ready to be released and let go of. There's a limit how much we can contain, and the well has to empty, so maybe cleaner water can build up again. So this is a very important conjunction, a meeting of two very big heavenly bodies. And you may want to look back to 2010-11 to see what was going on then. They would have been in different signs of the zodiac. This one's in Taurus, which is the earth, it's the roots. And again, to look at what have you rooted? Is it really solid? Is it mulching? Is it just not very healthy? What do you want to put into being? And Taurus rules our resources, not just money, but our spiritual and emotional ones. And what are our values now? What's our value system? What do we value? And in our businesses, value is paramount, isn't it?
Yes. Just as you're speaking, everything is just starting to like fall into place for me, right? And it's just like when you allow, which I talk about a lot in my mastermind, just allow and not push, push, push,
Mm.
everything unfolds as it should. And as you're speaking, I'm like, and that's why this is going on. That's why this is, all of the things. And I'm just like, yes, yes. I love that. I love that.
And also, of course, you mentioned what's coming up. Well, that's imminent, the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. And a lot of it's about the promise and feeling frustrated. Well, will it happen? But you've got to make it happen. We've got to be creators in what we do. And I talk a lot about creativity because it's not just artistry. It doesn't even have to be the artist. And I always say, well, the creative intelligence, God, whatever you want to call it, gave us life. So when we're being creative, that's when we're most alive. And I think Einstein said that creativity is intelligence having fun. And I think it was him who also said creativity is a way of making love to the world.
Mhm.
Oh, he quoted that, but the first quote definitely. Um, and to be creative, sometimes we've got to have the void. In the beginning, all creation myths have a void and emptiness. So when we have a void and a kind of empty feeling, the well has to empty. And all people who are artistic for a start and running businesses know that that well has to empty to fill up again. So being creative with our businesses is so important. So, so important. And that often means allowing the shadow as well, because where light and dark meet, that's where the colors come. So I think the creativity, which is now, particularly the Taurian energy we've got with Jupiter and Uranus there, is very much about the form, what we create in form, what we put roots into being and seeing it grow. Because it is, in the Northern Hemisphere, a beautiful time of year, late April, May time. And you're seeing that blossom and everything. So obviously there are many other signatures of planets which are important, and the major slow one, our slowest moving planet, is Pluto, and that entered a new sign after 16 years into Aquarius. last March, and we'll be there to 2044. It left Capricorn, which you may or may not sort of feel
Mhm.
happy about, because in Capricorn, it was a lot to do with power and management and how we organize things. And we saw a lot of people toppling, from high positions, and a lot of misuse also in corporate world, money markets, and so on. But entering Aquarius, it hasn't been there since the late 1700s, because Pluto has a 250 nearly year cycle. And what was happening? History lesson now. What was happening in the late 1700s?
All sorts of chaos.
Yeah, well, Civil War in America with the French Revolution,
Hmm.
reason, whatever that may mean. So very much a kind of the power to the people, and Aquarius is a sign of the people. So we're noticing this growing more. People are questioning more, which I think is so important, not just giving kudos or yes nod to people in authority. We need to question. Doesn't mean to say we have to rebel and be nasty, but we have to question. And I don't think there's enough of that. We tend to bury our heads in the sand. So there's going to be that people power. Of course, we're going to see more and more the rise of AI. I think that's inevitable. It'd be lovely to think it could be used ethically, but I'm not sure it will be completely.
Yes, like anything. I agree. I love AI. I use a lot of it for a lot of different things, but yes, like anything, it can be corrupted and people will choose to do that. Some,
And
yeah.
that's going to continue. So I think there's very much the sense of community, of the individual thinking. But the Aquarius energy is also about the team player, and how in a business, even if like myself, I work for myself and I'm my own team, how do I cooperate with it?
Hmm.
And if I have people working with me, how do I cooperate with them? So we get a lot of those kind of themes, um, a load of those themes coming up in the coming years, and a lot of issues to do with water as well. Because Saturn is in Pisces. There's a lot of, and Neptune's in Pisces, its own sign. So there's very much this theme of our own emotions. Um, how do we play the victim and rescuer, the victim bully, those kind of themes. And we may see more issues to do with water themed world coming up. Um, But definitely I feel as we enter May, this next week is quite powerful for letting go, releasing, as I've already mentioned, and not rushing. So let's get us into May, which isn't far off. And I think there's going to be a clearer, lighter energy, because we can't make decisions when we're clogged.
I absolutely am feeling into that.
Mm.
The letting go that things are lightening, like not light yet, but it's like right around the corner. Yeah, I can feel that. I love that.
As women, we just know these cycles. We don't have to have a book called an ephemeris to look at where the planets are. We can feel them, but our left brain and the world interferes so much in our clogged diaries.
Hmm.
Retreat ourselves, to just stop a little bit. The world won't forget us. And I can't say this strongly enough to women who work in business. And it's hard. I've done it 45 years, but I can still worry. Uh,
Hmm.
and it's like, I've got my taxes done on time, and have clients coming, and we all do this. And I think it's important to be kind to ourselves. If I could give one word for this year, it would be kindness. We could be kinder to ourselves as well as to others. So I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of growth this year, a lot of anger coming up, as we know in the world. There's a lot of divisions. I still have a good feeling about the general outcome down the line. Sometimes things have to, like a boil, has to burst before it gets better.
Yes, yes. And I've noticed that since maybe early last year,
Mhm.
the energy as it's shifting and the polarization happens, but
Yeah.
it seemed more intense and the energy of collective, if
Mhm.
you're tapped into that feminine energy and the energy of collective, it has been very positive underneath. That's what I've felt. And this polarization that we see around the world is the eruption of that, right? And so it's coming up and through. And the boil is actually a perfect analogy for that. As horrible as it seems, but yes.
But also
Yeah.
the earth changes. There will probably be more. And we know that earthquakes, volcanoes make the way for new land and it's tragic as well. But I think we are the earth. We can do a lot to not appease it like in the old days with sacrifices and rituals, maybe, but of course not, but certainly with sacrifices. But we can talk with nature, we can respect it, we can respect our bodies more. Definitely, it's
Yeah.
not just about what we're eating, and because really, food we digest it, but how do we digest life? What do we think and feel when we're eating? Because quality food, we don't need so much of it, do we? It's like many things, and junk food was empty, so we want more. And I
Yeah.
think we're going to start education, and the word educate means to lead, to lead. Um, Education in sometimes less is more. The rhythms. The sign of Virgo, which many people have as their sun sign, or you've got as your rising sign, it's not just about health and service and duty. A lot of people think Virgo is a little bit boring. No way. It's a rhythm, it's a heartbeat, it's the rhythms of day-to-day life. And that's what keeps us healthy. And we're on
Mhm.
this treadmill half the time, and nature will always slow us down. Our bodies will slow us down.
Mhm.
Wonderful wisdom in us if we could just, relate
Pay
to
attention.
it. Yeah.
It's so true. It's so true. I think we could stay here and talk for hours. We really could. Um, oh, yeah. I might have to have you back so we can have more conversations. Where can people find you? Where can people find you?
Best way is my website, which is www.ysanne. Will you have the spelling of it? YSANNE.com.
Yes.
I live near London, and that's the easy way to find me. Phone number on there, email, and I'd love to talk to some of your members. And I do write a blog, which I am overdue writing one, so that comes up, and so I will be on my website.
Perfect. Well, we'll make sure that we have your website listed with this so that people can find you. And any final thoughts or last comments before we go?
Well, obviously, this is very much linked to women, female, the
Mhm.
female, and quite interesting. It's in astrology, traditionally, Venus and the moon represented the feminine, the mother and lover, basically, or the artist. And we're a lot more than that. And so when the asteroids, well, were discovered in the early 1800s, most of them had been named after the goddesses of old. And those of you who are interested in mythology, you'd find the stories of the goddesses. There's some wonderful books out there on it. Um, on that subject and the different aspects of us, and we have them all in our birth charts. But I think to conclude, to really reminder um, of your creativity. We all are creative. Nothing to do with how well we play a piano or hold a tune. And being creative with our businesses, with ourselves, thinking outside the box, which is a theme coming up for Sunday with the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, which we'll feel for quite a while to come. Thinking outside the box. We haven't always got to be a rebel. We haven't got to destroy what we've done thinking it's no good or it's outmoded, not completely, but we can prune it, we can change it, we can dance with it. And the whole dance of the male and female within us is beautiful. It is a dance. So
Yes. Yeah.
it's not an easy time we're living in now. It's not easy, but courage means coming from the heart, the passion of the heart, and to be kind. And just above all, to be conscious of the rhythms in the heavens, in nature, in our bodies. It will tell you everything we need to know. And I'm here if you want to know more.
Perfect. I love that. I love that. Well, I want to thank you so much for being here. It's just been a wonderful conversation, and I really appreciate you sharing some of your knowledge. And I'm sure there'll be some people that reach out to you and to learn more.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. And to our listeners, are you a woman interested in aligning your heart-centered business with your ethics, values, and life goals? Join our Aligned Business Building Mastermind. We have accountability, like-minded women who become your business colleagues to share the journey with, resources, trainings, and more. And you can get 90% off your first 30 days. So we will be back again in 2 weeks. So stay tuned. This is live now, and I'll have the contact information up here for Ysanne. And we will see you next time on the Aligned Ambition Show. Thank you, everyone.